So modern attachments, Doug, what's the debate about? Where do you land on it? I want to talk about this because it's affecting nearly everybody in the industry right now, and the impact is pretty significant, both from a cost and a burden perspective.
Maybe set the stage for context if there are folks who are not familiar with the term modern attachment. What does that mean, or hyperlink?
For years, as we've been using email platforms for decades, and we've had the ability to physically attach files, and keep in mind, email systems and office systems used to be all pretty much on-premise, and you sent files and what have you and received them. And then from a discovery standpoint, that was a nice, neat package. You had the email, you had the attachment or attachments embedded in the email. It was all there. It was static. Boom, you were good. What's happened is the move to the cloud. Now people do email in the cloud. They have their office systems in the cloud. They have so much data in the cloud, and rightly so. They're saying, hey, I shouldn't be sending these files around. I should just send a link to it. If they've got access to the file, especially internally, they can just go and pull the file and do it that way. It avoids multiple copies going everywhere and so forth. What some people have done is they've called that the modern attachment because it's a hyperlinked file that's the same as an attachment. But it creates eDiscovery nightmares because it's not so easy. You no longer have that nice compact package there. You actually have to go pull the file from the linked file. And that file may not exist anymore. It may be a different version of that file than when it was sent. And all these issues are challenges. So the debate, of course, is twofold. One is, do we treat them or call them modern attachments? I like the term hyperlinked files myself. I know Craig is on, and he's positioned that you still treat and call them attachments. So there's debate about that. But the other aspect is, how should they be produced and what should be done? And there's been a couple of cases where I think the requesting party was saying, you've got to produce them as families. You've got to put them together and so forth. And most of the cases have come down to what was agreed upon in the ESI protocol. But the aspect is, from my standpoint, is yes, there's technical challenges and it's tough to do everything you want to do, but it's still evidence. One of my posts, I kind of used the Watergate analogy. Back in Watergate, the question was, what did the president know and when did he know it? And in eDiscovery, that's the issue always, is that it's not just the evidence, but who was it sent to and who received it and who sent it and so forth. So that's all part of evidence. And what I did is a post just this week where I said, you know what, eventually this is going to have to get sorted out, because I went back to the use cases. It's not just about litigation. It's about investigations, government investigations. Are you really going to tell a DOJ investigator, sorry, I can't produce that? It's not really an attached file. You're going to have to do the best you can. You're not going to be able to give a proportionality argument to them. So I think those are the things that we're running into. There's a lot of debate, and we had some case law that's been, say, both sides, and a lot of people think they shouldn't be treated as modern attachments. I think they should be treated as, they should be linked in some way to the email to which they were sent, because they're part of that evidence to the extent possible.
This is a huge issue just because of the burden, right? Proportionality issue, at least, depending upon how they need to be treated and whether they need to be produced and how they need to be sorted or presented. Huge issue going forward, because as we all know, documents are full of them now, whether it's a footnote or an underlined link.
And the second post I did was to try to frame the discussion a little bit, because with the first post, people said, well, what about a hyperlinked web page or something like that? So I came up with 5 assumptions that we really need to use to frame the discussion. One is there are hyperlinked files we're talking about, because that's the problem that's really
separate from a link.
Grown here. Exactly. Yeah, it's got to be a hyperlinked file. It's got to be in the possession, custody, control of the producing party. If it's someone else's control, the requesting party's got to get it from them. It has to exist. You can't produce what doesn't exist. And then, of course, it has to be proportional. And that proportionality discussion needs to be, I think, a proportionality argument needs to have specificity to it. Not just that it's overly broad and unduly burdensome, but something that is got some specificity to it. And a couple of things that I've mentioned is that Microsoft's come out with their ability to collect what they call cloud attachments, which is their step to automate it. But from what I understand, there's still some issues with that. Google's come up with some capabilities, but there's still some issues with that. So people in the field are coming back and saying, yeah, it sort of works, but there's still problems. But I do think we're going to get there, because I think we're going to have to.
Doug, do you find the argument that custodians still have the ability to attach files physically compelling?
There's still probably some that do that. but it's understandable why they would just simply link to the file. And it's not just like in Outlook or Gmail, it's in Slack and Teams and what have you. They're doing the same thing. So again, if it's Google, they're linking to Google Vault. And if it's Microsoft, they're linking to OneDrive and SharePoint and things of that nature. So I think we're going to see more people do that because it is, from an InfoGov standpoint, probably a best practice. But from a eDiscovery standpoint, it creates havoc. So all these new features are never developed with eDiscovery in mind. We then have to scramble and start saying, well, we got problems, and then we sort it out, and hopefully eventually the platforms provide a solution to it.